In this video, we're going to take a look at a blue ink by KWZ Baltic Memories. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the blue ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feathering, no spread, no shading in the writing, but we do get tone variation by pen where the extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub or the medium. The extra fine took 18 seconds to dry and the medium took 23. Scrubby for both give no color variation, we're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Pelikan M800 with a medium nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, but we do get quite a bit of ghosting on this very thin paper. We have no feather, no spread, no shading in the writing, and a slight bit of tone variation where the extra fine comes off a little bit lighter than the stub or the medium that are the same tone. The extra fine took 25 seconds to dry and medium took 35. Scrubby for both give no color variation, we're not getting it in the writing, and the smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down and then it's put into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this light grayish tone at the bottom that's pushing its way fairly evenly up. And then a dark blue at the top that gets super dark when it's gathering at the very top line. The one on the right is allowed to dry for 10 minutes, and what's most noticeable is that grayish tone is really forming a line at the bottom, showing that it might be a bit of a resistant tone. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread. We do get some tone variation in the extra fine, not in the stub or in the medium. And when it shows up in the extra fine, it's not tremendous. If you look at the and you look at over, you see a difference in them between them, and brown starts a little darker, works its way a little lighter, but it's all very dark. The extra fine took 20 seconds to dry while the medium took 26. Scrubby for both show no tone variation, but the extra fine does have some darker spots in it. And the smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it makes the highlighter fluid look a little dirty, and it feathers out quite a bit. Now, you can still read everything that's there, but personally, I would not use it in a note-taking situation if I needed to highlight. Water is reactivating and lifting most of this ink, and while it looks like a lot's there, if you look, you see one spot where the white of the paper is coming through, showing that it is really breaking it down. Pen Flush does everything that water does, nothing more, but it only took water to get this out of my pen, and the 1/3 bleach solution is completely removing it, but you're not going to need it. The next writing sample is done on life paper. No bleeding and no ghosting. No feather, no spread, no shading in the writing, and the extra fine as a tone is a bit lighter than the stub or the medium, but it's only a little bit lighter. The extra fine took 17 seconds to dry while the medium took 22. Scrubby for both are giving no color variation, we're not getting shading in the writing, and the smear test I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. KWZ's Baltic Memories has a viscosity of 2.12, making it normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests are done, there's a link to that video down in the description. But now let's take a look at Apica CD paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no tone variation, no shading in the stub or in the medium, but the extra fine does show some areas with some darker spots in it. Its tone in general is lighter than the stub or the medium. The extra fine took 13 seconds to dry, while the medium took 17. Their scrubbies show no color variation, but we do get a light peppering of color in the extra fine. The smear test, you stand a slight chance of recovery if you smear while you're writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. KWZ's Baltic Memories has an average dry time of 25 seconds, meaning you need to have some patience when you use this ink. The last writing sample is done on Franklin Christoph paper. Now we get a lot of spots where the ink is really coming through quite deep into the paper, but not through the paper where it's corrupting the page underneath. It does mean for me that I could not use the back of the page for fear of corrupting both sides. Now we have no feathering. Let me correct that. The stub has some feathering when you look at the word Baltic on the L and the T. Both are showing some feathering. Tiny feathers on the K. No feathering in the extra fine or in the medium. No shading in any of this writing, though the extra fine still comes through a little bit lighter than the stub or medium. Extra fine took 10 seconds to dry, while the medium took 14. Scrubby for both give no color variation. It's about what it looks like in the writing, and the smear test, you stand a very strong chance of recovery if you smear while you're writing. Instead of finding inks that look like KWZ's Baltic Memories, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a red ink from Colorverse, their C Europa. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of KWZ's Baltic Memories? The swatch shows way more ability to shade than we get in the writing samples. It's very dark, so shading is hard to find. In general, I find this too dark a blue for me, but it is a very solid blue ink. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? To lighten up its tone, I suggest going with a dry or very dry, fine or medium nib. This is not only going to help lighten it up, but it's also going to help bring out a bunch of the shading that this ink can do. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Pilot's Mixable Orange.